Good afternoon. My name is Konovalenko Yurii. I am one of the authors who will be present our article, Demand and Learning Environment to Provide English Language Learning at a Technical University in Ukraine. Is there sustainable demand for English language learning in Ukraine? Should be teaching methods corrected when introducing English language learning? Does existing learning environment satisfy the requirements of English language learning? An analysis of the results obtained indicates the viability of sufficient resources for those wishing to organize English learning training. Such a conclusion is based on the following identified facts. First of them is the 90% of students studied English at school. Among them, 30% of students have a sufficient level of knowledge, such as level B and C, according to CEFR. Up to 60% more can relatively easily and quickly reach the required level. These students must improve their proficiency from level A to level B. Fourth is about 2/3 of those who study English are interested in introducing English learning instruction. Despite some variability of the result in general, the indicators of CNUTD are quite homogeneous of faculties and courses. Next is the motivation for English language training is primarily connected with the opinion that such training will contribute a career growth. 6 is language proficient influence the priority model of learning. The faculties where students have better knowledge and, on average, do not deny more radical models of English language teaching. A more cautious attitude towards different model of learning prevails at a faculty where knowledge is weaker than in other. The fact that about 43% of number of students consider English language teaching on a contract basis is significant. More loyal to this model were students of the contract form of study. Among them, the number of students who agree to pay tuition is 1.5 to 4 times higher than among budgetary students. The understanding of learning preference is a prerequisite for the efficient use of ICTs in education. Therefore, the identified difference in learning preference must be taken into account when developing education materials. This statement is illustrated by the example of teaching Ukrainian and Chinese students with different ratios of visual to verbal styles. Students with a distinct visual learning style better remember for what they see. For example, pictures, diagrams, flowchart, graphs, movies, and visual demonstration. Verbal students are more likely to receive information in the form of words, written on oral explanations. The optional pedagogical approach to the organization of training as well as the optimal teaching methods should be different from students with different preferences. Only those electronic resources which are qualified for the use in teaching students with preferred visual and verbal learning styles are shown in one of our tables. Integration aspects of style and selecting electronic resources and teaching methods allow one to change the teaching methodology. Focusing on the characteristic of students, the main stages of the developed approach are as follows. The development of a training and work program and the establishment of objective of the study of a discipline. Investigation of a composition of a student group by Felder-Soloman's model. Selection of teaching methods and essential electronic resource according. The optimal methodology seeks to balance teaching and learning styles rather than achieve absolute consistency between each lecture, action, and students' learning preference. The discomfort should not be significant when students work according to a method that does not fit their learning styles. However, some discomfort is necessary for the information of knowledge and qualification of a future specialist. Entirely consistent with student learning preference, teaching methods do not create conditions for their progress. The results show the existing MEED system allows ones to operate effectively with electronic resource and organize access of students to information regardless of the language of study. The fullness of electronic resource in demand is a critical requirement in creating conditions for efficient English language training. A survey of 1,414 students of KNUTD showed the existing high demand for English language education. 59% of all students surveyed, or 66% of those who studied English in school, expressed interest in English language learning. The demand for English language teaching is supported by a reasonably high level of language proficiency. Of the 1,414 students, about 90% of students studied English at school. The survey showed that out of this amount, approximately 30% possess knowledge at level B or C, which is sufficient to accept training material in English. About 59% show knowledge at level A, which requires some improvement, but simultaneously can be considered as the basis for improvement which is desired can be amended quite quickly. Only 11% are feeble in English. So, the motivation of English language training is primarily connected with the opinion that such training will contribute to career growth. The second most important motivating factor is studying abroad or in graduate school. The basis for organizing English language training should be considered the readiness of approximately 44% of students to participate in programs on a paid basis. This figure is lower among budgetary students and, depending on the faculty, is 1 and 3 to 4 times higher for students of contract forms of education. Among the proposed form of training, the easiest one prevails over other. When training begins with teaching one or two disciplines in English. This form dominates in those faculties where students show a lower level of English. At the faculties where the level of knowledge is high, there are not noticeable preference among the form of training. In Athens, approximately the same percentage of students are ready for a complete transition to English, as well as various forms of partial study. The understanding of learning preference is a prerequisite for the efficient use of ICT in education. Therefore, the identify difference in learning preference illustrated by the example of teaching Ukrainian and Chinese students must be taken into account when developing educational material. The readiness of the existing learning environment was tested by analyzing the organization of ACEs to English language teaching material, assessing the demand for different electronic resources. The results show the existing MEED system allows ones to operate effectively with resources and organize access of student to information regardless of the language of study. The fullness of resources in demand is a critical requirement in creating conditions for efficient English language training. Thank you for your attention, and we are ready to answer to your question.